What if I told you that the airline cancellation rules you think you understand, the rules you've trusted for years, the ones you assume will protect you if something goes wrong, have quietly changed in ways that could flip your entire travel plan upside down without you even noticing? And yeah, I know that sounds dramatic, maybe even a little crazy, but in the last year, airlines have done something unusual. They've shifted the fine print so subtly, so quietly, that most travelers still book tickets thinking they have the same protections they had back in 2019 or even 2022, and they absolutely do not. Now imagine this: you're sitting at home scrolling through flight deals, you see a fare that looks almost too good, maybe it's a flash sale or a 24-hour discount, and you think, well, I've got the 24-hour cancellation rule anyway, so if I change my mind, I'll just cancel. Everyone believes that rule is universal. Everyone thinks it's carved into law. But here where the trouble begins, because that rule, the one travelers love and rely on, has new exceptions hidden inside layers of airline wording that weren't there last year. And if you don't spot them, you could end up stuck with a non-refundable ticket, no matter what you thought the law said. And no, this isn't the stuff the big travel channels cover, because most of them repeat the same outdated info, the same 24-hour free cancellation guaranteed by line. Which is only partially true now. What airlines are doing lately is creating booking paths, special fare buckets, third-party partnerships, and dynamic pricing pages that technically comply with existing regulations, but quietly remove the protection you assume comes with your ticket. Here's the wild part. Even the DOT admits some loopholes exist now that didn't exist before, and airlines use them like a secret doorway travelers rarely notice until it's too late. So let's walk through how this works, and you'll see exactly why simply booking a flight the normal way is no longer safe, especially if you're planning a big international trip or stacking connections that could turn into a domino collapse if one company suddenly changes something. First, the biggest shift, and most people have no idea this rule even changed, is the rise of flex-optional fares that appear identical to regular basic economy or economy tickets. They look the same, priced the same, advertised the same, but they're coded differently on the backend. If you buy through certain promotional links, you're not technically purchasing a standard retail fare, which means the airline labels it as a special category purchase, and that category might not qualify for the 24-hour cancellation rule at all, even though it looks like it should. People call airlines furious, and the airlines simply say, sorry, that wasn't a standard fare. It's insane. And here, another twist you won't hear anywhere else. Some airlines now use split record ticketing without telling you. That means if you book a round trip, the system may secretly break it into two one-way tickets stored under one confirmation number. Why does that matter? Because canceling a split record booking sometimes triggers only half the ticket to refund, while the other half falls into a penalty category. So you lose the money for one direction while thinking you canceled the whole thing. Nobody realizes it until after the cancellation is processed, and since this is technically industry standard, they get away with it. But wait, there's more mess. Airlines have also changed the rules around involuntary cancellations, the kind that happen when the airline cancels on you, not the other way around. You'd think if the airline cancels, you always get a refund. Easy, simple, logical. Except now, with many carriers, if your flight gets cancelled, but they offer you any alternative, even something ridiculous like a connection through a totally different country or a flight 18 hours later, they can deny your refund if that alternate option falls into what they define as reasonable. And each airline defines reasonable differently, some with time windows so big it feels like a joke. You could have booked a 7 a.m. direct flight and end up on an overnight multi-stop itinerary, and they can still say no refund because technically they offered transportation. It's unbelievable but true, and even crazier, if your flight is not cancelled outright but significantly delayed. The rules used to be straightforward, but now every airline secretly changed the definition of a significant delay. Some say 3 hours, some say 5. Some say only if the delay affects your arrival time and not your departure time. Some ignore weather delays entirely. Some don't allow refunds at all for partner-operated segments. So travelers stand there feeling helpless because they know the airline changed something, but they can't figure out what. Now let's get deeper, because this is where things get kind of shocking. There's a new trend in the airline industry called dynamic cancellation liability, and most passengers have never heard the phrase. What it really means is that the cancellation flexibility attached to your ticket is not fixed when you buy it. Instead, it shifts depending on demand, load factors, and backend algorithms even after the purchase. Airlines can change the cancellation conditions of a ticket category without openly notifying customers as long as they claim the base rules didn't change. This means your cancellation rules can tighten after you buy, as long as they don't violate previously published legal protections that have become so narrow the airlines have endless room to manipulate them. And no influencer talks about this because it's confusing, and most travelers won't believe it until it happens to them. But it gets worse, much worse. Another thing airlines quietly introduced is something called strategic reclassification, where they retroactively switch the fare class for operational reasons. If that fare class change happens, your cancellation rights might vanish instantly, even though you didn't do anything wrong. Airlines claim this is necessary for inventory control, but it's basically a loophole that lets them retag your ticket as a non-refundable one if they want to consolidate fare buckets for an oversold flight. And guess who suffers? You. On top of that, some carriers are adding a new layer of protection rules tied to digital check-in behavior. So if you check in early, or don't check in early enough, the airline may categorize you differently, which again changes the cancellation or modification rules. I know that sounds insane. How does checking in affect cancellation? But that's where airlines are quietly experimenting, dynamic passenger scoring. And here's a wild one. Some airlines are now using engagement scoring based on whether you viewed certain emails. Yes, missing a single promotional email could technically affect your cancellation eligibility. These systems run on AI-driven customer segmentation models that airlines brag about in corporate presentations but never talk about publicly to travelers. And we're still not even halfway through the hidden shifts. Here's something almost no one has realized yet. More airlines are partnering with hotel and car rental providers to sell packages that look like normal flight deals. But when you book these deals, the flight portion behaves like part of a package, not a standalone airfare. That means your cancellation rights vanish instantly because package rules follow completely different laws. People think they're buying a flight with a free hotel add-on, but legally, they bought a package tour product, and refund rules for packages are brutal. And the airlines cleverly label these packages in tiny, nearly invisible wording, knowing most people never read it. Now let's talk about the most dangerous new rule of all, the post-disruption waiver exclusion. This one is almost villain level. If you try to cancel your ticket after any kind of disruption, even if it wasn't your fault, the airline can claim you're no longer eligible for a standard cancellation because your itinerary changed status. So if your flight got delayed for an hour, or the gate changed, or a crew scheduling issue happened, the airline can claim you triggered an operational exception, which removes your right to certain refunds. They can even argue that once the disruption happened, you should have waited for them to resolve it instead of canceling yourself. This allows airlines to legally deny refunds that travelers used to get effortlessly. And it gets scarier. Airlines are also using predictive modeling to forecast which flights are likely to be cancelled or delayed. If an airline predicts your route might experience a future disruption, they might restrict cancellation options days before anything even happens because their algorithms want to minimize refund exposure. That means you could go to cancel a flight, and the system will already be blocking the option, even though no real-world problem has occurred yet. Try explaining that to customer service, and they'll just read the script like robots. Now here's something almost no travel YouTuber ever mentions. The new rule changes also affect travelers using points or miles. Airlines quietly updated the cancellation terms for award tickets, especially in partner redemptions. You might think your points booking is safe because the airline that issued the miles has generous cancellation rules. But if the flight is operated by a partner airline, the cancellation policy of the operating carrier applies, not the issuing one. And some partners have no cancellation rights except under extreme circumstances, so you could lose your miles forever even though you booked through a brand you trust. Most people don't learn this until they lose hundreds of thousands of points. Even crazier, airlines now charge reinstatement surcharges for returned miles after cancellation. These charges are dynamically calculated. Some days it's free, some days it's $25, some days it's $250. Same airline, same ticket, same itinerary. The only difference is the algorithm's mood. You want to hear something even more shocking? Airlines have started adjusting cancellation rules based on your payment method. Yes, the card you use affects your cancellation protection. If you use a debit card, you get the weakest protections. Use a prepaid card, practically none. Use certain low-tier credit cards, you might get downgraded cancellation benefits. High-tier cards get the best protections, but airlines never tell you this. They just silently categorize passengers the moment their payment clears. And let's not forget about third-party booking sites. They're becoming a minefield. Many of them now use airline-sourced cancellation policies, which means they defer to whatever rules the airline sets, even if those rules contradict what their own site advertised. So you think you're canceling through the third-party platform, but the platform says, we must follow the airline's policy, and the airline says, we can't help because you booked through the third party, and you end up stuck between two companies passing responsibility like a hot potato. Now, you're probably thinking, so what do I even do? How do I avoid all these traps? And here's the real secret. There's a method airlines do not want passengers to know. Always force the system to display the Contract-of-Carriage snapshot at the exact moment you purchase. Most people don't know this is even possible. If you open the Contract-of-Carriage through a specific sequence, open in a new tab, scroll to Fare Terms, then click the embedded timestamp, the system freezes the version of the rules attached to your ticket. That means if the airline tries to change the rule later, the archived version attached to your booking still protects you. Most agents don't even know this exists, but Backend staff do. It's the closest thing travelers have to a shield now. And at the end of all this chaos, you're left with one huge truth. The airline cancellation landscape in 2025 is nothing like the simple, predictable system we grew up with. It's a maze of dynamic rules, algorithmic traps, shifting definitions, and legal loopholes airlines designed because passengers rarely read the fine print. But once you understand how these new hidden rules actually work, you suddenly have power, real power to cancel intelligently, avoid traps, protect your money, and book flights without feeling like you're walking into an ambush. And that's why this matters. Because travelers deserve better than quiet policy shifts and confusing rule changes. And now that you know what's really going on, you'll never book a flight the same way again. And trust me, that's a good thing.